right. So back to Hinduism. And now we're going to talk about Buddhism and Jainism, which were around circa about 500 BC. These two similar, there's a lot of crossover in them, though also very distinct. Religions kind of broke away from sort of this Vedic Hindu orthodoxy and came up with their own systems that in some way overlap with some concepts of Hinduism, but also don't, and come up with their own worlds. So the first one here is Buddhism. It was founded by this guy named Siddhartha Gautama, who presumably is a historical figure. He was born a prince in northern India. Here's his birth. Actually, the story goes he was birthed out of the side of his mother, and when he started walking, he walked right out of the womb, and then wherever he walked, lotus flowers would come. So you can tell he's already very he was very blessed as a child. And the thing was, like right as he was born, the sage comes and says, he talks to his dad and says, this little kid is going to grow up to be the greatest king ever in the world, or the greatest preacher ever in the world, king or sage. And obviously his dad says, well, I want him to be the greatest king ever. So for the first half of Siddhartha's life, he lives in this palace, sort of secluded here. Here he is as a child. Here's a statue of he does ultimately become a sage. Here he is as sage persona. So he's born. He's in this palace at 29. He's like, he had everything he ever wanted and needed. Every desire was met, the whole deal, right? And then 29, he's like, I want to see the world, right? What is this? What's outside of these palace gates? And the story is that, he sees, starts seeing the world, and he walks out and he sees this old guy. What is this? And his chariot driver says, that's this old man. Everyone gets old. He's like, he's never seen anybody old. Everyone he's ever seen is young and healthy. He's like, gosh. It's an old man. Then you see a sick man, right? Sorry, this is the old man. This is the sick man. What's this? Oh, that's somebody who's sick, right? And he's like, well, why? What is this sick? I don't understand. Says, yeah, people just get sick. But in the palace, nobody was ever sick. And then he sees a dead person. He's like, what is this? What is this? He's like, everyone dies. It's just the way the world is. But nobody ever told him this. So it's very shocking, this world around him. And then he sees this sage, right? And he says, okay, what are you doing? And the sage says, well, I'm trying to kind of like figure out, what the meaning of life? What is this existence about? So at this point, he says, okay, I'm gonna reject my life as a king and a prince. I'm going to embrace a sage. I'm going to try to figure out what the meaning of life is. How do we fix this? These worlds here, and that's what he does. And so for 6 years, he wanders around, tries all these different practices and everything he possibly could. Nothing works for him. So he finally sits down under this Bodhi tree, and he sits and he prays. During the time, he's attacked by these demons who kind of try to like break out his mind, and trying to kind of distract him from his thought. Here is Buddha being attacked by Mara, but he says, no, I'm going to work through it. And he comes up and he achieves enlightenment, and he comes up with what is called the Four Noble Truths. And this is kind of the essence of Buddhism here. That life is suffering, but there's a cause of suffering. That suffering is desire. Fortunately, right, we can stop. If we eliminate desire, you can stop your suffering. And how do you eliminate desire? Well, there's an eightfold path, which eightfold path is 8 sort of ways of conduct. So again, the way actions, speech, thought, right action, right speech, right thought. There's 8 different ways in which, if you live your life in this way, you will stop desiring stuff. You will eliminate. And then you will ultimately stop suffering. So, and again, kind of how you can see this in the real world, right? That a lot of people want things they don't have, right? That a lot of drive. I want another car. I want a bigger house, or I want a better relationship, all sorts of things, right? But you're desiring that, right? But you're instead of acting in a way that you will achieve those things, you're just, I want that, I want it, I gotta get it, right? And then that's what's causing your suffering. So, but if you try to think a little bit deeper, how can I achieve this in a way that makes everything work? Then your life will be better, right? So it really is like you can. What it comes down to is the Four Noble Truths. By doing things properly, and because we're cultivating yourself as a good person, you can make your life less suffering for yourself and those around you. So that's kind of the essence of the enlightenment of Buddha. This is his aha moment. And the nice thing about the Buddha is that here he is. Here's kind of the birth. He was born up here, sort of in the mountains. This is where he gets enlightened in this place called Bodh Gaya. And then the big one here at Sarnath, which is still there, still sitting here. This is an old stupa. He decides that he's going to teach. He's going to teach this Four Noble Truths and a bunch of other stuff, right? And the reason it's sort of this heterodox religion is some things that he throws off. That he rejects the Varna system. Buddhism does not believe in the Varna system of the four Varnas. In fact, in Buddhism, there's only two distinctions. You're a lay Buddhist, everyone's equal, or you're a monk, a monastic, a monk or a nun, because you can be a nun in Buddhism as well. So that's kind of this heterodox side. It rejects the Varna system. It actually rejects gods too. In Buddhism, there are no gods. Even the Buddha himself is not a god, right? That these gods. So in Hinduism, there's all these gods. They were Vedic gods, then got into sort of pantheon of particularly the three main ones of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. In Buddhism, there is no gods, right? There's also this idea of impermanence, right? That this idea of karma, these actions over time lead to something else. And in Buddhism, that goes away, that everything's impermanent. Everything's going to rise and fall. It's going to go away. Even your actions are impermanent. So if you do a bad action, that's not the end of things. You can go back to the Eightfold Path and redo that action. And, it's sort of, nothing's intertwined, right? The goal is to achieve nirvana, which is the same idea of moksha, extinguishing yourself from samsara. But again, it's not like this path. There's no Brahman, there's no Atman. There's no like that you're just going to go into this essence, right? You're just going to, in Buddhism, if you cultivate the right mind, you will extinguish yourself from existence, from the cycle of samsara, of life, birth, and death and birth and life and death and birth and life. That's the ultimate goal, is to get out of there. Right? And then he taught at Sarnath. He taught for 40 years, walking around here, and these monastic groups that are supported by these lay people. And here's a famous statue of the Buddha dying. When he dies, he has the relics, and then those relics get put into stupas, and that's how people become the center of these monastic worlds. So that's basically Buddhism in a nutshell, of what kind of I mean, it's changed since then, but that's kind of the fundamental underlying ideas of what Buddhism is. And Jainism is similar to that. It came up in this about the same time, right around Mahavira. Vardhamana Mahavira is he was from Magadha too. He's contemporary of the Buddha. In fact, both those texts talk about early texts of them acknowledge each other. They are around. He is in Buddhism you have in Jainism you have these figures called Tirthankaras, which are sort of there's 24 of them. They're kind of like they were able to achieve liberation, nirvana as well. So that's one of their ideas there. They're going to achieve that. But the way you do that and we'll talk about this in a little bit, is through this sort of strenuous practice, full detachment of the world, where, Hinduism, you do good deeds, you work your way up over lifetimes into achieving moksha. Buddhism, you cultivate yourself, get rid of suffering and desire, you achieve moksha or nirvana. And in Jainism, if you have to like physically kind of like, sort of fasting and some other rituals to really achieve your state here. We'll look at that in a little bit. It's believed that Chandragupta Maurya from the Mauryan Empire was a Jain, so you kind of see religion and empire there. Ashoka was a Buddhist, Maurya was a Jain, so you see these religions working there. There's a lot of Jain temples all throughout India. Again, kind of known for their art there and sculpture. There's two main sects of Jainism today: Digambaras, which is sky-clad, which are actually like people just don't wear clothes, and you see them around India. And then there's Shvetambaras; they actually wear sort of a white list. But these I should talk about. The Digambaras are the people who walk around naked are monks on this path to liberation. If you're just like your regular Jain, layperson, you're not going to walk around naked there. But the core beliefs of Jainism, and again, sort of heterodox here, that all beings have a soul, a jiva. So everything, and not just humans, like everything has a soul, right? And all things have a soul, and karma actions, right, are actually permanent. In fact, they're so permanent they're actually a piece of matter that attaches to the soul. So all your actions, good or bad, attach to your soul, and you kind of like your soul is this is a vessel a boat that has all these holes in it, and the boat fills up, and it with karma, and it can leak out, but you're constantly struggling in this boat that is forever kind of attaining and leaking out karma. But since everything has a soul, Jains believe in ahimsa, which is non-violence and respect for all living beings. So they're strict vegetarians. They don't eat any meat. They don't participate in any warfare. They can't be soldiers. In fact, there's some professions they just won't do, like if it has anything to do with killing living beings. Even in some cases, farming. Because there's little bugs and things that grow and stuff. So a lot of Jains, for that reason, become a lot of merchants and traders. Jain is what a lot of Jain communities are. So in order to achieve liberation, you've got to shed this karma. It's accumulated on your soul. So first you have to become a monk, which is like a whole. So you're gonna break away. You're gonna get out of the lay community. You're gonna do that, and there's all these things you got to follow there. And then you have to go through these strict ascetic practices. You have to fast a whole bunch, self-mortification, like pulling out your own hair, all these things to kind of detach yourself from the physical form. And then you have to study a lot of like Jain scripture, and so a lot of these becoming monk. This is how Jain scriptures were passed down over times, and a lot of these monastics, as they part of their strive for liberation, was recording, thinking about these Jain philosophies and ideas. Here you see this is a Digambara. This is a Jain temple in Shravanabagola down in sort of southern India. This is a big festival here where they actually pour different things, milk, honey, over this Jinnah figure. This is one of these Tatankaras there. And again, similarly to Buddhism, they completely reject the Varna system, reject the Brahman Atman system. There's no Varnas, there's no castes. Everyone is either a lay or a monk there. So that's kind of the difference between Buddhism and Jainism, this sort of heterodox worlds. So you can kind of see there's terms that overlap, ideas of samsara, there's concepts of karma, but they're very different in the Buddhist and Jain context than the Hindu context. So yeah, so then these, particularly Hinduism and Buddhism, world religions, where Jainism is still predominantly just in India.